The global economy no longer requires Russia. Putin's attempt to coerce energy from Europe has failed since credible alternatives have emerged. Since its invasion of Ukraine in February, Russian President Vladimir Putin has been riding high on his supposed energy omnipotence, holding the entire economy hostage to his whim. Putin has stopped delivering natural gas to Europe since last summer, hoping that the continent's inhabitants, who would be suffering and without heat over the winter, will rise against their leaders, making it politically difficult to continue defending Ukraine. The threat was serious since 83% of Russian gas was sold to Europe in 2021. Approximately half of Russia's federal revenue comes from overall exports, which include 200 billion cubic meters of pipe gas each year and 7 million barrels of oil per day. Russia supplied 46% of Europe's overall gas consumption, and the region also relied significantly on Russian metal and fertilizer supplies. Perhaps more importantly, Russian commodity exports were critical to global supply systems. As the first anniversary of Putin's invasion approaches, it is apparent that Russia has irrevocably lost its previously dominating economic influence in the world market. Because of Europe's extraordinarily mild winter, Putin's moment of maximum influence went without incident. Russia was the most significant casualty of Putin's gas gamble, because the world, particularly Europe, no longer requires Russian gas. Putin has little influence over natural gas pricing. Europe swiftly secured alternate gas sources by converting to international liquefied natural gas, or LNG, therefore avoiding freezing to death. This comprised around 55 billion cubic meters from the United States, which is 2.5 times more than US LNG sales to Europe prior to World War II. In the meantime, these alternative supplies, together with improvements in supply for nuclear, renewable energy resources, and coal, have reduced Europe's dependency on Russian gas to 9% of total gas imports. In contrast, compared to earlier Russian gas purchases, Europe currently purchases more LNG. Furthermore, because of Europe's exceptionally warm winter, not only have the worst-case situations been avoided, but the continent's entire storage tanks have not been exhausted and may be utilized again in the coming winter. Germany's storage tanks were 91% filled in January, up from 54% the previous year, implying that Europe will need to import far less gas in 2023 than it did in 2022. The implications are enormous. Renewable energy resources and bridging fuels will have plenty of time to completely integrate and function in Europe, given that the continent's energy demands are fulfilled at least through 2024. To entirely and permanently replace Russia's 200 BCM per year gas export capability, an additional 200 BCM per year LNG export capacity must be constructed by 2024. Also gone are the days when energy was costly worldwide and supply constraints were imposed by Russia. Aside from the predicted reduction in European LNG consumption, China is changing its dependence from imported LNG to indigenous sources. Given the rapidly developing LNG supply, it's not unexpected that the gas futures market is now pricing gas to be less expensive than pre-war levels for years to come. Putin, on the other hand, is out of options and unable to replace his former primary client. He's learning the hard way that switching from untrustworthy commodity suppliers is far easier for customers than it is for suppliers to locate new clients. Putin is already generating almost no money from gas sales as a result of replacing his prior 150 BCM of pipe gas sales to Europe with a dismal 16 BCM to China and a pittance in worldwide LNG agreements hardly enough to support expenditures. There are no markets for Putin to replace even a tiny amount of the 150 BCM shortage, since China lacks the pipeline capacity to receive any more for at least 10 years and wants to employ indigenous and diversified energy supplies. Furthermore, Russia's obsolete technology precludes it from expanding LNG exports beyond a drizzle. Putin's capacity to influence oil prices is dwindling as well. The threat that Putin would shut off Russian oil supply caused oil prices to skyrocket by 40% in only 2 weeks is long gone. In reaction to the G7 oil price limitations announced last month, Putin placed a freeze on oil shipments to nations that accepted the price cap effective on February 1st. Why? Because it is obvious that the world no longer relies on Putin's oil. Increased supply, which is more than enough to compensate for Russian crude output decreases, is shifting the oil market in favor of buyers rather than sellers. Russian Deputy Prime Minister Alexander Novak told Russian media in December that the government was willing to lower oil output by up to 700,000 barrels in 2023. Oil prices are already lower than they were before the conflict, while countries such as the United States, Venezuela, Canada, and Brazil increased production by 4 million barrels per day in the second half of 2022 alone. Many lost Russian oil barrels will be smoothly and quickly replaced in the coming weeks, as additional fresh supplies are expected this year. Furthermore, unlike last October, Putin cannot compel Saudi Arabia to intervene and rescue the day by abruptly decreasing OPEC output quotas. This is owing to heightened international scrutiny of OPEC's enormous surplus of underutilized capacity, which has prompted the US to halt key weapons and technology shipments to Saudi Arabia. The G7 price ceiling pushes Putin to make a lose-lose option that whatever he picks diminishes Russia's position in the energy market and decreases its power. Despite the fact that India is importing 33 tons more Russian oil than it did a year ago, Russia isn't making much money due to its $44 break-even cost of production plus higher transportation costs, since China and India are using the cap to drive a hard bargain with Russia without publicly engaging in it. However, if Putin continues to threaten to cut output anymore, he risks losing critical market share in an increasingly oversupplied oil market, as well as significantly decreasing his personal revenue at a time when he is already cash-strapped. Putin has long been obsessed with this. Hello and welcome to Economic News. If you're enjoying the video so far, please show your appreciation by hitting that like button and subscribing with all notifications turned on so that this video will be moving around the YouTube algorithm, allowing more eyes and ears to see and listen to this video. Now, let us get back to the meat of it. Even Putin's residual goods have been depleted. Putin's effort to weaponize food was thwarted when even his ostensible supporters turned against him, as well as in markets for key metals where Russia has historically maintained a dominating position, such as nickel, palladium, and titanium. Fear of extortion among purchasers at higher prices has expedited the restoration and rekindling of fixed public and private investment in critical mineral mining and supply chain products. The mineral-rich continents of North and South America, as well as Africa, account for the vast bulk of these. Moreover, the total production of new mines launching in the next 2 years amounts to more than adequate supply, and certain critical metals markets, such as cobalt and nickel, are large enough to permanently replace Russian metals in global supply chains. Along with underestimating the Ukrainian people and underestimating the West's collective solidarity and willpower, Putin's financial miscalculations are simply the latest in a long line of failures. Putin's disastrous economic and energy war has clearly had consequences. The spillovers have transformed many lives, supply networks, and trade flows, and consumers are still feeling the pain at higher costs as the newly discovered reduced prices take time to spread across the economy. What is important is that the endgame is in sight. Putin has irreversibly harmed Russia's most powerful hand, its capacity to produce oil and commodities, making it impossible for Russia to inflict such turmoil and upheaval in the global economy in the future. The war continues on the battlefield, but on the economic front, triumph is within grasp. Thank you so much for watching this video. Leave a comment down below sharing your opinions on the war and how you would stop it given the fact that you have similar powers to Putin and the alliance in the West. Take care now and watch our other videos on the channel.